Brothers and sisters, I love you. The Lord loves you. Thrilled to have you with us, and thrilled to have General Chilton back, 4-star general in the Air Force and an astronaut. And we'll be taking your questions today, I promise. Thanks for joining us. General Shelton, thank you so much for being back with me today.
Good to be back with you, Chris.
It's an honor to talk to you.
Thank you.
We really dove in last time that you were with me to the experience of being an astronaut, going to space, becoming weightless. Right? Look on the website. Look at YouTube. Check that one out if you missed it. Share it with all your friends. I want to dive into what sets a person up for success. I mean, this is the iconic dream to be an astronaut. You know, how many kids want to be an astronaut when they grow up? What sets you apart to do that? By the way, we're going to take your questions. Text 720-650-0100, 720-650-0100. So let's start there. I know you're a humble guy. More humble than I, but looking in yourself, I mean, you can locate, you can see things in you that set you up to succeed in really extraordinary ways.
Yeah, well, I give all credit to my parents, actually, and my teachers that I had. I was so blessed to have Jim and Shirley Chilton to be my parents.
Praise God.
You know, and they taught me life. Things that were important to life. You know, my father's, one of his mantras, you know, if you get a job, make sure when you leave that job, it's better than when you showed up, whatever the job is. You know, and, you know, so the idea of working hard made sense. They valued education. You know, my father was first generation to go to college in his family. Never would have gone, was it not for the GI Bill after World War II. And, you know, my mother had done a year of nursing school, which, you know, for a woman to be going to college in the 1940s, even for a year, was you know, a little unusual in those days. So they really valued education. They valued hard work. One thing, though, that they always said to me that I told my children is that they didn't care if I got straight A's, but they did care that I gave my best effort.
How beautiful.
And, you know, as long as you could, you know, hold your head up and said, I did my best, and, you know, you got a B or even a C or whatever, you did your best. And that's what they emphasized to me. And so whenever as I went through life, whether it was school, where I tried to do my best, but also at work in the Air Force or whatever, I just tried to be a contributor all the time and try to improve whatever job I was in and do the best I could.
That's a really hard thing to convey to a kid.
Yeah, so I mean, you have to. I think you know, I lived it with my parents. You know, that was their mantra. You know,
how do you convey that to your kids? Because I know there's a fine line.
Yeah.
And I mean, for me, it comes down to things like, do I praise my kid when they make the basket, or do I praise them just as loud when they tried really hard and dove for the ball and fell in their face?
Yeah, right. Well, I can remember one of our daughters. You know, she was like straight A's all the time. And I told her, I said, you know, I worry about the day you bring home a B. I worry for you. You know, because I think you're holding yourself to such a high expectation. And really what I value is not that you have straight A's or not, it's that you've done your best. And if that day you bring home your first B, you know, you need to be satisfied with that, because I know you will have, this is one of our daughters, you never had to ask her to do her homework. You know, she just totally self-motivated. And so, you know, that was a philosophy, and I think that carried me through a lot of things in life. Yeah.
I obviously set you up for being a driven person at a really young age. Because to get into the Air Force Academy is no small feat. I mean, you're by 8th grade, you're setting yourself up for that or not.
Well, I'll tell you, Chris, I'm glad I'm not competing with the kids, the young people coming into the Air Force Academy now. I mean, we live in Colorado Springs. We host cadets at our home. We sponsor them. You can't believe how talented they are. I couldn't compete. But you have to remember, when I was applying, it was during the Vietnam War. And so there weren't a lot of people real interested in joining. 1972. Okay, so you know, going off and joining the military voluntarily. You know, the draft was still going on at the time. And in fact, I remember I got my draft card my freshman year at the Air Force Academy, because I was 17 when I went there. And in November, I turned 18, and I got a letter from this, you know, selective service saying I needed to register for the draft. And I thought, you already got me.
Yeah, no thanks.
I tore it up. So technically, I guess I'm a draft dodger.
Well, that's hilarious. Yeah, no, speaking at the Air Force Academy, I spoke there a couple times, and it's the only talk before the talk where people warned me, look, if they fall asleep, don't be offended.
Yeah, no, they're exhausted.
They just don't get to sleep.
Yeah, it's pretty rigorous.
Yeah.
And that's part of the training. They want to teach you how to manage your time,
Yeah.
and so they give you more things than you could possibly do in a day,
Yeah.
and you have to prioritize.
Yeah,
and
it's
that's
incredible.
life too, right?
Yeah.
That's life.
Yeah. So those I'm hearing a core thing that helped set you up for success was not tying your self-worth to your success. That you knew, I'm going to give it my all, but whether or not I fail that's not who I am.
Doesn't mean it doesn't hurt.
Right.
Because you do want to be successful when you approach things that way. But yeah, and I think Colin Powell wrote about this in his book about, don't tie your ego to your job. Because particularly in the military, it's an up or out system. If you don't get promoted, then you leave. You're asked to leave. And ultimately, everybody's asked to leave. Mm-hmm. When I retired from the military, if they'd allowed me to stay on, I would have. But it got to a point where that was time for me to go. And so it doesn't mean that you didn't want to continue that, but you have to be able to put that behind you and move on.
Yeah.
And I think that's another maybe gift I have is people ask me all the time, do you miss fill in the blank?
Yeah.
Do you miss flying fighters? Do you miss flying in space? And I say, honestly, no.
Wow.
I'm always looking forward. I'm internally grateful for for my career that I had. I mean, it was just so great. But the only thing I really miss is when I had all four of my children at home, and they were young, and it was the salad years where they think their dad hung the moon, and the weekends were going to the zoo and that stuff. That's what I miss.
I want to call that to center stage for everybody watching right now. Guy went to outer space. The thing looking back over the years, that's the pinnacle experience, is hanging out with your kids.
Yep, family.
Yeah, we miss that, don't we?
Yeah.
While it's happening, we don't realize how awesome it is.
Right.
I had on Thanksgiving, we had all the kids and I have 2 grandkids. Praise the Lord.
So you're living it again.
That's right. And it's bringing it fresh to mind. We had one day sitting around the house, this is the best day of my life. And then I thought, you dummy, how many best days of your life did you not realize you had been having?
Right. That's right. Yeah.
And Lord, give us the grace to be present to those days.
Yeah.
How did what's the overlap of faith with those with the things that sets you up for success? How did faith set you up for that?
Oh, I think for me personally, it was also core, and you have to begin with my parents at home, and their value of the faith, but also I had some just fantastic teachers along the way, and that made it. I'll call one out right now. Wally Wade, was a young man who had just come out of Loyola University in Los Angeles, and while he was waiting to get into law school, he came to teach at St. Bernard High School, where I was, and he taught theology, and because he'd studied that at Loyola, a layman, and
Beautiful.
He was fabulous, and he had a huge impact on my life, as did, Father Peter. Taught me religion, Mr. Gremmer. I can go back. I can name every teacher I've had since kindergarten.
Beautiful.
And I pray for them because of what the gift they gave me, and I tried to invite them all to my space shuttle launches.
Wow.
And those that I could contact, I would try to send them to thank them. I mean, because that's why I was there. Because they cared about me and taught me. But core to all that, I didn't really answer the faith part. It's just I've never experimented with walking away from my faith. And
you're blessed.
But I think that was because of other people's influences and blessings from the Lord too. I think.
Wow, praise the Lord. So I promise to let questions that come in interrupt my flow. We'll get back to that in a bit. This one is too good to turn down. What's in Area 51? And let me add to that, do you believe in UFOs as an astronaut?
No.
No? You don't believe in UFOs?
Well, let me tell you. So I have a great colleague, friend, Mike Full, and we came in together as new astronauts, and he's a great astronaut.
Yeah.
And Mike, I thought, always gave the best answer. Because you'd always get this asked when you're doing public relations stuff.
I'm sure.
And Mike said, he says, the thought that there could possibly be other intelligent life in the universe that we might one day be able to communicate with is totally exciting and interesting. He says, on the other hand, if all of this was just made for us, how cool is that? So there's no bad answer to that
Yeah,
question.
it's true. It's true.
There's no bad answer to that question. And
yeah.
so I'm kind of agnostic on it. You know, God could do whatever He wanted. He may have, maybe there are other people out there, but if it's just for us, oh man, what a gift!
Yeah,
What a
truly.
gift.
What an over-the-top, extravagant stage for God to have set
Yes.
for us to meet Him.
Yeah.
Which would be fitting with love. Love goes over the top.
Right, and he
make
didn't
sense.
he didn't tell us how it all works or what it all was.
Yeah.
He gave us a brain that allows not only, free will but intellect, and allows us to discern these things as the human race goes on. What
Yes.
a great gift!
Truly.
Yeah.
Truly. Speaking of discernment, got another question here. I know I'll never be an astronaut, but how do I discover the big thing I'm meant to do? And I know your path there wasn't like I want to be an astronaut, so that it was incremental. But how would you answer?
Well,
that
I'm
question?
still trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do. I think one of my constant prayers is, please God, reveal Your will. What do You want me to do? I want to do that. And it wasn't until I started reflecting back on my life that He actually did that. He opened doors for me and presented opportunities that weren't any part of a plan I had, but led to different paths along my life that I chose to take, and they weren't good or bad choices. I mean, I could have chosen other things too, and I'm sure I would have fulfilled His will for me, but, I think He's always, we're praying these things, He's answering them, but we're not cognizant of it at the time.
Right.
And only in reflection do I see it.
Yeah.
To answer the question, I think, and again, I tell this to my children and to young people, we all have talents that are unique, and we know what we're good at and what we're not good at.
Right.
And if you pursue the things you're good at, you're probably going to be happier than if you pursue the things you're not good at. And and so what am I good at? I've decided on reflection, I am eminently trainable. I can be trained to do just about anything. I'm not necessarily going to be great at it, but I'm a good student. I'm a good listener, and if you can explain it to me, I can do it. That's my talent.
I'm making it into my next book. That's profound.
So you just gotta do a little introspection on what am I good at, pursue that. And it turns out I was pretty good at flying airplanes.
I'm going to quote that. I'm going to quote you on that many times. I'm trainable, teachable. Boy, that sets you up for so much success.
It does. It gives you so
Humility
many
sets you
opportunities.
up for success. Wow. And what you shared when I was first asking about what's set you up for success and what you just shared just now, you have this sense of self-worth that comes from deeper things than your achievements.
Yes.
Which also set you up to take risks, because if you fail, you don't lose your very sense of identity. I've worked with a lot of people who have been very successful, wildly successful, and I see a lot of mixed motives. And that's okay. The Lord uses those, like with the apostles. But right before the Last Supper, they're arguing who's greatest between us.
Yeah.
Their motives were mixed. It was about them and it was about God. It was also about them, but about God. And eventually they Lord, it's all for you.
Yeah.
What was did you have those mixed motives? Like, there's a lot of people who's like, I need my dad's approval. I tie my worth to my accomplishments. Was there one of those particular experiences on this road to where you ended up that you were purified of, or could pinpoint and say, that I don't want that. We're going to be intentional against that.
Yeah. Are you talking about just a general choice, a life choice you have to make along the way that is, good versus bad, or just in general?
To own your own motives.
Yeah.
As you became a general, like things you could look at it yourself. I struggle with this myself, with looking within and saying, okay, that if I wanted to do this show, for instance, for the approval of people, that becomes clear as I start doing it and succeeding at it, and think, oh, that part, Lord, let's root that out of my soul and bring that to confession. And then I become a truer leader.
Yeah.
What were the things you had to root out to be that great leader?
Well, I think ego. In spite of, I think everybody we all have an ego.
Everybody has ego.
And so I learned early on from a leadership perspective, I don't recall ever reading a book on leadership, but I'm a huge student of leadership. And I observed how people led. And you learn a lot from bad leaders, sometimes more than you do from good leaders. I was blessed to always serve under good leaders. But I saw bad leadership, and on occasion from others. And so it was to say, well, how am I going to treat people? It's for me, it's an easy answer. When people ask, what's your key to success as a leader, which is what is valued in the military, which enabled me to continue my career for so long. Is I always say it's the golden rule. You treat the people that work for you like you would want to be treated yourself, which doesn't mean you're always, it's all hearts and flowers. Sometimes people need a swift kick in the rear to get back online, and that's what you would want. That's what you would want, if you were starting to stray. And so, it was kind of that development of that approach to people, and which again ties right back to our faith, right?
How many people did you have under your direction as a 4-star general?
Well, various jobs, but about 40,000 at one point, in various tentacles of the organization that were ultimately, pulling in the same, working for my command.
Yeah, I get a little overwhelmed with 2 to 3.
Well, you can only lead about a dozen. Coincidentally, that's what the leadership books will tell you, and coincidentally, that's what Christ had, right?
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah, and because those, you can only, be in close contact with about a dozen people and truly evaluate them and mentor them and motivate them. But then you want them to each do that for another dozen, and each of them to do that for another dozen. And if you set the tone right at the top, and that flows down through the organization, man, magical things can happen in any organization.
Well, what qualities would you look for in those dozen that you as a great leader would be raising up?
Well, for one thing, I wanted their ideas, and I wanted them to bring to me things that to fill in the gaps in my knowledge. And I remember coming into an organization once where...
There's that humility thing again.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you think you can do it on your own,
right,
you're going to fail, I think. Yeah. We need each other. And just because someone is subordinate to you rank-wise doesn't mean they're not smarter than you.
Yes.
or more have different experiences than you that they can bring to the table. And so I wanted, what I valued most was honesty from the people that worked for me. If the emperor doesn't have clothes on, please tell me.
Yes.
Don't send me down the parade. Believing that I've got this figured out when I don't. And it was all about building a team that was greater than the sum of the parts.
Would be vulnerable. Would be honest.
That's
hard
honest.
in a work setting.
Yeah. And I wanted them to work hard. I wanted them to have the same ethos I had. That my father had raised in me, that you work hard.
Yeah.
That's what's important. Make the organization better. It's better when you left than when you arrived, because of your efforts, no matter how small they are.
Yeah.
And I wanted everybody in the organization. I didn't care if you were the janitor working in the building, or you were the top scientist on the staff, or engineer, or whatever. Everybody, I wanted them all to feel like that we could not get the job done without them.
God's made us interdependent. I mean, and he could do everything perfectly in the blink of an eye. He chose to need us and all our fumbling to build his kingdom. It's taken me, I love hearing you say this, because it's taken me a long time as a leader, way less than 40,000, but as a leader in the church in my own way, to be very comfortable admitting all the gaps in my spirit, in my intelligence, in my approach to leadership, and to say, look, I stink at these 15 things, but that's why I have you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's only a weakness if I feel like I have to pretend I'm good at everything that I'm not good at.
Yeah.
What a stellar example you are in that.
I think one of the biggest mistakes a person can make is to know that they're the smartest person in the room, which is fine. You can know that, but to act like you are is not a good idea.
No.
Because no one will contribute.
Yeah.
And you're surprised oftentimes, even though you may be the smartest person on the subject, to find that this orthogonal approach that someone else brings up, that you've never thought of it that way. And you're better for it.
Yeah, amen.
You're better for it.
Another great question. Favorite space movie or TV show?
Oh, gosh. So this may shock some people, but look, I've talked about how I kind of wandered into becoming an astronaut. I was not a Star Trek. I was not a Trekkie.
You were not a Trekkie?
No.
All right.
So,
all right.
but I think when Star Wars first came out, that was a classic. You know, that really, special effects wise and everything. Although none of it's like that. There is no sound in space.
Oh yeah.
and you can't maneuver like the starfighters maneuver in that. That's all fantasy. But it was still a cool story, right?
Yeah.
What I really do enjoy though are the Apollo 13 movie. So I like
fantastic.
about real things that happened, and the drama in that movie was so well done. Even though I knew how it ended, right?
Yeah.
I was on the edge of my seat.
Yeah.
That's a good test of a movie. Yeah.
What kind of things as a leader of 40,000, and then when you're leading way less people but have the responsibility of a space mission?
Yeah.
What kind of things would keep you up at night, and how did you cope with the stress?
Oh well, I always. One of my jobs where I was in charge of a lot of different things, I would get that question from reporters. So, what keeps you awake at night?
Yeah.
I think at that time I was in charge. Well, I was in charge of all our nuclear weapons in the deterrence force and space and cyber for the Department of Defense. Now, what keeps you awake at night? I say, well, honestly, I have 4 teenage daughters. that is, for me, worrying about them is what keeps me awake at night, because in the jobs that I had, I was surrounded by such great people. Now, it doesn't mean there weren't tense moments and things, but if you're successful in building this team that you trust, which I think is the coin of the realm of any team and leader-follower relationship is trust. If you can build that in your organization, you can let a lot of things go, because you know that they're going to take care of the problem for you or for the organization, and you don't have to solve every problem. You just got to tee them up for success and enable them to put their talents to work. That's what leaders do.
Yeah.
They enable the team to excel, because it's not about one person. It's not about the leader. It's about the team.
Wow. I love your focus on, well, you keep first things first. Focus on the people and trusting them, and then beautiful things happen. What keeps you up at night? Your daughters. Focus on the kids. What kind of work do you do on yourself to keep that focus in the right place? Because I could get distracted preparing for a show and be a jerk to my family. You have a time in your life where, hey, next week Dad is going to be leaving the planet, and yet have dinner with the family and be truly present to them. Did this come naturally to you? Or?
No, maybe, but we used to talk about this in the Air Force. It was called compartmentalization. So where you're getting ready to take off, you're flying fighters, and it's training mission, but it's still really intense and a lot of fun too. But you're at the end of the runway, and you cannot waste a single cell of your brain thinking about the bill that you can't pay at home, or the sick child, or the problem a child's having at school, or the relationship with you and your spouse may be a little rocky at the time. That cannot be on your mind at that moment. For the next hour and a half on this flight, you've got to be totally focused on that. So we call that compartmentalizing. And I think I carried that with me through life, for certain periods. But at the same time, you're never perfect. I certainly wasn't. Of then shifting that compartment back to the family.
But you would try to be intentional about that.
Being totally present, as you say.
Yeah.
Because there's things itching at you, from work or whatever.
No, sometimes when I'm heading in the house, I'll literally say out loud to myself. So my voice tells my brain, "Hey, Chris, it's game time."
Yeah.
Yeah. Now is the time when you bring your A game.
Yeah.
Just like you did before at work.
Yeah. But that can also create some tension too, because your spouse wants to know, well, how was your day at work, and you don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
But they're truly curious, and you don't want to compartmentalize that away and be present.
Oh yeah.
So there's a balance there that I think we all struggle with as husbands, fathers, wives, and
you've seen a lot of people succeed. You've seen a lot of people burn out. You've seen a lot of people who have great dreams in military or to be astronauts. And then people who actually succeed at it. What sets the two apart? The people who burn out versus the people who stick with something and drive it through to completion.
I'm not sure I know exactly. And we always talked about balance in the military, about trying to balance, You got to stay in physical condition. You got to stay in good mental condition. You got to get the mission done. So, and you got to keep continually educating yourself. So. I would talk about mind, body, and spirit. You got to take care of those three things. And we couldn't proselytize in the military, and I think that's appropriately so.
Right.
I don't care whether you're Jewish or Catholic or Muslim; it didn't matter to me.
Yeah.
And or an atheist. But however you take care of your spirit, you need to do that to be effective for the team. Same with your mind and your body. But there was a fourth one too, and that was your family.
Self-care is not just it's not just empty talk. This is absolutely necessary.
Yeah.
Is to keep that interior balance going.
Yeah, and the fourth
Just
thing
joyful.
is your family. And the question always is, how do you balance work and family? And I used to think I was pretty good at it. And a friend of mine pointed out to me that we were talking about leadership, talking about this subject at Notre Dame one day, and he's a great friend and a corporate leader in America. And they asked me the question. I gave this, you got to set priorities and stuff. And he looked him dead in the eye and says, you can't. You'll never be in balance. You'll never be in balance. But what's important is you keep working to be in balance. And so if you stop working to be in balance, I think you can lead to a burnout because you'll just become overly focused on maybe on the job and neglect the other thing.
A tightrope walker's got 1,000 little adjustments they're making as they go.
All along, and now they have to be totally in balance all the time. But I know me personally, I was never totally. So when I was with my family, and I talk about this with the kids now, and they actually make me feel really good now. They said, Dad, you were gone a lot, but when you were with us, you were with us.
Praise God.
And we recognize that.
Praise God.
Yeah.
And they didn't think, space was more important than me or my game.
No, I go to the side. It's about showing up when you can.
Yeah. Now, sometimes you step back, you see the big picture of life, and you come back to the particular, and it doesn't draw you away from the particular that you have that big picture in mind. It helps you dive into it more deliberately.
I agree.
How did stepping back from the planet and coming back then to changing dirty diapers, how did being an astronaut and having the extraordinary experiences you had make you better at daily life, a better man, a better husband, a better father?
Well,
how did it change you?
Who made me still makes me a better man, a husband, and father is my wife, Kathy. She's amazing, and she always kept me grounded. We met at test pilot school. So we were classmates.
Wow.
And there was 25 students. She was the
That's
only
a stellar couple right there.
She was the only woman in the class. And 24 guys and her. And by the way, she was only the second woman in the history of the Air Force uniformed to graduate from test pilot school. And her predecessor had graduated 10 years before her. So it was the glass ceiling that had been broken had reformed when she came in.
Wow.
But
Good for her.
She totally disarmed us all and was just so, graduated #1 in the class. I mean, she was just really good. And just a happy person. But she, unlike a lot of the spouses, because of her technical background, because of her flight test background, flying in the backseat of fighters and stuff and running test missions we did together often, she totally appreciated what I was doing when I was an astronaut and when I was a test pilot. She understood the technical risks. Technically, and yet she never once asked me to not do what I love doing. And at the same time, though, she would ground me if she thought I was getting a little too big for my britches. Which
it happens
is great.
to all of us, right? The ego is always there.
Yeah.
There's the sense of self that gets expanded.
Yeah. I mean, so my first flight, I'd been part of the test team that was testing the drag chute for the shuttle. The first missions didn't have a drag chute, but after Challenger, we developed this drag chute, and this was Endeavor's maiden flight, and we were going to deploy the drag chute for the first time, and I was going to be the guy pushing the button, 2 buttons, right after landing.
Like George Jetson.
Yeah. Right. And then Kathy, I've been talking about how we've been preparing for this. So we land at Edwards Air Force Base in California after our 7-day mission. I walk up to my wife. She's there holding our. Mary Kate was 4-month-old baby in her arm, our second daughter, and I walk up to her And, I'm expecting this big greeting, welcome back from space. Oh, you're so great. I love, she says, that was the puniest drag chute I've ever seen. That was one of the first words out of her mouth. And I go, okay, I'm back to planet Earth now. Thank you, dear.
Literally back to Earth.
She was expecting this giant, parachute coming. It's pretty good size, but it wasn't big enough to suit her.
That's awesome.
So, so she really kept me grounded.
I'm so grateful for your witness of life and for all the wisdom you just shared. I'm sad we don't have another hour together, but really what you drove home for me, a big takeaway, I'm a big fan of the saints. And I've often thought about the fact that it's the little things that make the saints who they are. John Paul II had many days where he's sitting at a desk and signing pieces of paper.
Sure.
And in fact, most of human life is that way.
Yeah.
You watch the Avengers, there's one of the great Avengers where at the end they're sitting at a diner like not knowing what to say to each other. Like, we just saved the universe and just
now what?
Pass the fries.
Yeah.
But it's about finding the humility and focus to be in that moment where God is, and then He leads us step by step. Thanks for that wisdom. Hanging around with people like you makes me a better man. That's why I do this show.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you guys, and I hope it makes you a better person and brings you closer to the Lord too. Love you. We will see you next week.